Expanding on what I brought up the other day, I think conditions are ripe for a new version of QAnon to emerge in Gen Z or even Alpha, but I don't think it's inevitable. So I'll start with some social emotional context and then describe the information landscape as I see it. The 4chan Petri dish QAnon grew out of was crusty with cynicism, despair, and nihilism. But because people are endlessly creative, that demographic became a transgressive, shitposting class identity bent on taking revenge against the normies by memeing Trump into office. One excellent book on QAnon origins is It Came From Something Awful by Dale Baran, and I'd say it's a must read now because he's lucid about the causes of this depressed aggression. One framework he uses comes from the late Marxist critic Mark Fisher, describing late capitalism enacting the slow cancellation of the future. This is a beautiful phrase that has a general resonance, but Fisher and Barron are talking specifically about the fact that capitalism has machine learned how to instantly derail any critical, transgressive, or generative social movement into yet another sales cycle that strands young people in passive, demoralized consumption while employment pathways narrow, leaving them nothing but the pleasures of cruelty. Now, that was the 2010s. Think about how much more volatile, fascistic, more climate injured and burning the current world is, how much more fragmentation and despair the Gen Z and Alpha crowds face. As a Gen X parent, some days it's unbearable to think about how to lend a hand. But one thing we can do, I think have to do as parents or mentors to younger people during a period of internet chaos and trauma and non-accountability is to make sure they have non-speculative sources of information about things like the Epstein files. Everyone should start with Julie Brown's journalism, for example, along with a structured analysis of capitalist power relations to show that Epstein is not extraordinary. He's symptomatic. Young people will encounter the files in bits and pieces, decontextualized, sensationalized, minimized, or exaggerated, and this was exactly the scenario in which most anons encountered the Q drops and then spent years baking them. Like the drops, the files have as many holes and non sequiturs as Trump's brain, and people will confabulate to fill them in. And this is already happening. Over on Threads, we've got a sheaf of Gen Z accounts conflating the Wayfair conspiracy theory with the Epstein files. It's good to remind everyone you can. One, confabulation harms Epstein survivors by complicating their signal with a lot of noise. And two, fascists love a world in which the truth is impossible to find or people are paralyzed in the attempt, because then a key defense against power is gone. If you have the chops to communicate clearly, you can be a social and epistemological anchor for young people who have more reason than we know to believe that nothing in the world makes sense, young people who are therefore vulnerable to being told that they are witnessing demonic evil, which they can't do anything about, rather than the crises of capitalism, which they can do something about.